Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Bufnagle the podcast, where we explore entertaining and enlightening discussions of the adventure of life and all things good. From science and technology to history and philosophy to leadership and success. We hope to give you a better understanding of the world and skills for everyone to pursue their own adventure.
Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Bufnagle the podcast, where we talk about all things good in the pursuit of the adventure of life. I'm Rafe, and it is another great week for a great show. And one reason we do that is because we have great listeners like you. We've made us a global top 10% podcast. You guys know all this stuff, right? Reach us at bufnagle.com. Remember, share the love, share the buff, give us a 5-star review, hit the subscribe button. You got to do that. Do that, hit the button, and you automatically get downloaded without any work done on your part. Whenever the buff drops new content, it magically appears on your phone or other podcasty machine. Remember, tell a friend to listen and you will get a free episode, and you can send me a coffee or whatever. I'll bet you could send me a popsicle if you did that right on the Buy Me a Coffee link that is in the show notes. Well, I am holding in my hands a book that I borrowed from my daughter, who borrowed it from a library, who borrowed it from another library. And the book is entitled, Snow Crystals by W.A. Bentley and W.J. Humphreys. And it is a fascinating old book. It's nearly 100 years old, and it has photographic plates of snowflakes. And so we're going to talk a little bit about the book and about Wilson Bentley, who is the snowflake man. And this was... My daughter talked about this book, and she happened to leave it at my house, which was very fun for me because now I get to go through it and present this fun stuff to you and encourage you to go out and request a copy from your local library so you can see these phenomenal pictures. Snow, the beautiful snow, as the raptured poet sang, winter's spotless downy blanket for forest and field, has ever challenged pen to describe and brush to paint its marvelous mass effects. Nor is the aesthetic urge of its very tiniest flake or small crystal that gently floats from heaven to earth any less compelling. It is even more insistent, doubly more, for it not only quickens that response to the dainty and the exquisite that makes us human, but equally arouses our desire to understand, our curiosity to know the how and the why of this purest gem of surpassing beauty and of a myriad forms. Now, that's the opening line from history of part one, the snow crystal. And I'm going to read a number of these things in here because I started taking notes, and I just found that the way some of this is written, what this guy did is incredible. All right, so this book, the copy I have was a reprint from 1962, I think, something like that. But it is apparently just a reprint of exactly the same stuff that was originally published in 1931. So that's nearly 100 years ago now, for those of you who are keeping score at home. And this book is, it's about 10 pages. 13, yeah, give or take. 10 pages of text at the beginning, and then about 200 pages of photographs of snowflakes, categorized by general shape. And there's some discussion of the different types in the beginning, but it's 200 pages of these with 12 snowflakes per page. It's over 2,400 photographs, or I guess they call them photomicrographs of snowflakes and they're categorized by shape. So you can kind of see how you move from one to the other. And there's all sorts of discussion like that. So this guy who did this is Wilson Bentley. And he was born February 9th, 1865. So he's almost 100 years to the day, older than I am. And he died December 23rd, 1931. Now, 1931, that's the date of the publishing of the book. So right after this book was published, he was 66 years old, I guess. He passed away, and he passed away of pneumonia, which he may have acquired walking around outside in the cold, as he always did. So there's a little unfortunate Well, an unfortunate end for Mr. Bentley. But what he left behind was a lifetime of work photographing these things. So, like he says in the introduction, it's one thing to look at snow in its grand and beautiful form, even though springtime is coming for us and we want to get rid of snow. But there are some still storms coming across the plains and across the early parts of spring here in North America that will, some people will curse the snow. But Bentley apparently loved the snowflakes. He said as a kid that he always, the farmers in Vermont where he grew up, they didn't really like this. They didn't like the snow as much, but he always found it was the most wonderful thing out there. So Bentley, born in 1865, and he did such a great job. He photographed snowflakes, but he developed the system for photographing snowflakes. So, in fact, it has been said that he did so well in photographing these snowflakes prior to 1931 when he died, that he did it so well that hardly anyone bothered to photograph snowflakes for almost 100 years after he was done. So it's been a long time before anybody decided to do it again. And keep in mind that he was doing this in the days before digital photography. I mean, I guess that should go without saying that he didn't have an iPhone and with the super, version 16 lens or whatever it is on. He doesn't have three different cameras on the iPhone to give multiple sensitivity and f-stop and all these other. He was doing all of this with a real camera, right? Where he had to do all the hard things. And not only that, he was doing it on a microscope outside where it's cold, because if you don't, then the snowflakes melt. So he was a boy that always loved those beautiful tiny miracles of beauty, as he said. He worked really hard to learn how to do this. And it says his parents got him this. Where does it say that? They got him his telescope when he was his camera when he was very young, and he took pictures of snowflakes all for half a century, and did it the hard way with photographic plates and negatives and all that stuff. So, some things from the book. All right, a little history at the beginning. The first person who tried to do snowflakes was a guy named Olaus Magnus, who was Archbishop of Uppsala. I guess that's in Sweden. And he has a book on natural phenomena that was published in 1555. And there's a woodcut of snowflakes that he says he saw. Now, I've never done a woodcut. It's on my list of things to want to do. But basically, you have to take an image and you have to carve it into wood in reverse, so that when you put ink on it and then roll it over, or tip it over and press it into the paper, you get an image on the page. So apparently, the guy who was doing the wood cutting wasn't very good. It says in the book, the engraver certainly must have lost the good bishop's sketches and his instructions, and then given his greenest novice the honor of making the first of all cuts of the snow crystal. So the book is not very kind to the wood cutting that was done to show the snowflakes. But anyway, that's 1555. Fast forward about 250 or 300 years to 1820, and the Arctic explorer Scoresby apparently drew some very careful drawings of snowflakes, and it's a hard thing to do because snowflakes tend to they either evaporate. They melt and then evaporate, or they do a thing called sublimate, where they turn directly from solid into gas and they just kind of disappear. If you've ever seen them on your jacket in the winter, they will just sometimes they just disappear. They just dry up and go away. They turn back into water vapor. So Bentley was around then to actually record these photographically. So this was starting in the late 1800s and continuing into the 1930s. The book says the following. Then came the photographic microscope that leaves nothing visible unrecorded and adds nothing, whether for art or for symmetry, that is not really present in some form or another. But only an occasional enthusiast worked on the snow crystal with this revealing instrument, and of these, in turn, The most persistent of all and the most successful of all is W.A. Bentley of Jericho, Vermont, who pursued and still pursues this search with the insistent ardor of the lover and the timeless patience of the scientist. And so it has come about that his careful search of snow after snow, winter after winter, for nearly half a century among the northernmost of the New England mountains has revealed not just a few crystal varieties, but many hundreds of forms, all based on a common hexagonal pattern. Many, though, with their alternative sides more or less suppressed, even to the stage of being equilateral triangles. Not only did he find this great multiplicity of kinds, but also he skillfully obtained beautiful microphotographs of them, and thereby made it possible for others to share at leisure and by comfortable fireside the joys that hour after hour bound him to his microscope and his camera in an ice-cold shed. So the pictures, when you get this book from your library or order it somewhere off a used bookstore, or if somebody decides to reprint it, you do that. You will get the benefit of this guy doing a whole lot of work to do these things. It was a difficult process, and it is described thusly in the book. Taking fine pictures of worthwhile snow crystals requires good judgment, quick decision, speedy action, and great skill. They blow away and even melt cringingly at the faintest breath, nor can they long endure the radiated heat from a nearby human body. Hence, it is that skill and speed are of the very essence of success in photographing the snow crystal, that but a moment is here and then gone forever. But how is it done? Right, here's how you do it. For those of you who are planning to do this next winter, whenever that next winter is for you, here's how you do it. First, you catch your snow crystal. This is conveniently done by holding a smooth black board, a foot or so square, a moment or two, or as long as necessary, in the falling snow. The catch is then taken under shelter to keep it from being blown off the board or otherwise disturbed, where the light is good and the temperature is that of outdoors. After a hasty inspection with a suitable magnifying glass, a promising crystal, if one is found, is transferred carefully and with most delicate touch to a suitable glass plate, a microscope slide, with a small wooden splint, and there pressed down flat or brought into proper position and made slightly to adhere to the glass by a gentle stroke of a small wing feather. Now, I don't know about you. I think about the size of snowflakes, and I think about being outside where it's cold. You catch one on a piece of, imagine a piece of wood or like a felt covered board, something like that, where it's black so you can see the snowflake against it. You catch the snowflake on that. I guess if it's really windy, it's going to be hard to do, but you can still catch a snowflake on there. You take it somewhere where it's still cold, but it's no longer windy, where your camera and your microscope are set up, and you have a little wooden splint. So this splint has to be able to get underneath the snowflake and pick it up off the felt. And then you carry it on that little wooden splint and you drop it on the microscope slide, and then press it, dump it onto the microscope slide. It's a snowflake, right? So it's not very heavy. It's kind of hard to shake it off of there, right? You use this little feather and you kind of put it on the microscope slide, and then it might land on the microscope slide on its edge, and it might kind of stick there. It might blow away. It might slide around. It might start melting, but you want to get it kind of flat because you have to take a picture of it, right? It's on a microscope slide. After this, it should be more minutely examined with a microscope to determine whether or not it is worthy of photographic preservation. If it seems to be worthless, there's nothing to do, of course, but start all over again. However, when a photograph of a crystal is to be obtained, it obviously is necessary to take it with a photomicrograph camera. That is, a microscope fitted with a camera bellows and a plate holder where the eyepiece normally is placed or farther removed. So you have to have the right equipment. And these guys couldn't go down to, I don't know, they couldn't go to microscopes.com or cameras.com and order a photomicrograph machine. They had to kind of construct these things on their own. The camera, you could buy a camera, which was what? It was a lens with an opening for the light to come in, and then a place to hold the photographic plate. So it just exposed it and and then you could close the door again. And now you have a piece of exposed film, which you have to go do whatever you do with exposed film. You have to set it, right? So it doesn't lose it. It becomes a negative. And then you have to make the photograph from that. Right? So you have to take the picture of this thing. And, these cameras were big things. They were the size of shoe boxes. If you were lucky, you got one as small as a shoebox. But these were heavy and they had to be mounted on something. And not only that, but now you're going to take it and you're going to make it even harder because you're going to put a microscope. You're going to put a microscope lens on the end of the camera. So this is going to get difficult to do. So you have your snowflake on your microscope slide, and then you're going to try to get a picture of this thing, all right? The camera is turned toward the sky, toward the clouds actually, either directly or through a window, and then, or previously, if more convenient, the crystal adhering to the glass slide is properly centered in front of a low power 1/2 to 3-inch microscope objective, and the focusing so adjusted as to give a picture of the desired size. The plate holder is then put in position, lenses are covered, the slide of the plate holder drawn, the lens uncovered for a period of exposure, the lens is then covered again, and the slide put back. One may proceed now, if one likes, similarly to making other exposures while the snow falls, and attend later to the developing, fixing, drying, labeling, and storing of the negatives for future use. The light that comes through the crystal, okay, so remember, you're photographing a crystal. So it's not like you're not bouncing the light off of something. The light's coming through this crystal on the slide, and you're going to take outside light and do this because you can't get, it's late 1800s. Your ability to come up with good lighting is highly restrictive unless Edison lives next door, and I don't think he lived up in Vermont at the time. All right, the light that comes through the crystal and by which its picture is made can be regulated by a suitable stop or a round opening. In practice, it appears to be best to make this stop rather small and use a moderately contrasty photographic plate. The proper time of exposure under these conditions is around 20 seconds. Okay, that seems like a relatively long exposure for us, but they had whatever film they had back then. Right? It's about 20 seconds, but it varies so much with the brightness of the sky and with the equipment and plates used that each worker in the field must judge from his own experience what length of exposure to give. So you can do all this work and you can say, well, okay, it was an afternoon snowfall and the cloud is that the sky is that cloudy gray color. There's some light coming through, but it's not a lot of light. And maybe you're in Vermont and it's in the middle of winter. So maybe you have very short days and it's a winter sky. All right. So there's enough light coming through the clouds to give you a full amount of white light coming through this thing, but you're not sure how much light you have. They didn't have these photographic meters, these things to tell you what the stop was going to be. There was no autofocus. There was no auto settings, none of that stuff. You could do that. You could get the snowflake, you could catch it, you could get it into the shop, you could get it on the plate, pick it up with a stick, knock it off with the feather, get it onto the plate, get the camera set up, and actually take the photograph. And you might be that there was too much light and you overexposed the film and you got nothing. All right, so this is hard work. And this guy not only had to be a snowflake man, but had to figure out how to get photographs of this thing. So it goes on. Evidently, the camera may be stood vertically, if so desired, and the light of the sky or the cloud could be turned up through the crystal by a mirror underneath. That's typically how you do. That's how you look at a microscope, right? Typically, you look down through that thing and the light is reflected off a mirror. In other respects, too, the details of the procedure may be varied. It is only necessary to work intelligently. Okay, that's difficult for some of us. And patiently, another thing that's difficult for us, toward a definite end. All right, so you have to work intelligently and patiently, but you also have to be quick because that thing, you're going to lose that snowflake. It's going to, it is, what did they say before? Here now, gone tomorrow, something like that. It is the end product that counts, not the minutia of the process of obtaining it. So this is a hard thing to do. And in this book are 2,400 of the photos, and they are absolutely stunningly incredible. As far as, I have trouble using my automatic iPhone to give me a picture that's not blurry. And these are just incredible exposures of these snowflakes. And you can see them online. If you go to do the little Wikipedia thing and you type in Bentley's name, Wilson Bentley, and there's a couple examples on the Wikipedia page of some of these snowflakes, and they are like the snowflakes you imagined, but they are as if they were done by some insane Baroque artist. They're just absolutely incredible stuff. But it gets harder, okay? Since the snowflake or crystal is colorless and transparent, it is obvious that the contrast between the light and shade in the picture taken by transmitted light are owing to corresponding differences in refraction or bending of the passing light by the crystal. Most of the differences, in turn, are caused by minute but nearly or quite symmetrically arranged air cavities in the snowflake. Some of them, however, appear to be produced by tiny ice ridges, others by grooves, and still others apparently by crinkled water film incident to the incipient melting. So this thing's going to melt, and there can be some junk hanging around there. It's difficult to tell at some point the difference you're seeing in refraction, because you're seeing through a crystal here. You're not actually bouncing the light off. You're looking through the crystal. Since the crystal is transparent, it is evident that a picture of it taken by transmitted light against a white background, such as a cloud, cannot stand out in marked contrast with its surroundings. This defect can be largely remedied, as Mr. Bentley has done on duplicate negatives for the crystal pictures in his book, by patiently and with scrupulous care cutting the film away from all parts not actually covered by some portion of the crystal. It's difficult to tell. You're not going to get good contrast of the crystal with the not crystal, okay? And in the book, these pages are black in the background with white snowflakes on them with little, and you can see the contrast in the snowflakes with black and gray. He took photographs of snowflakes, made secondary negatives, right? Not the originals, took the secondary ones, and then took a knife or a scissors or whatever it is and cut around the outside of the snowflake image with that knife so as to make the snowflake the only thing that negative was. And then when he would, expose, what do you do when you fix or when you develop? There's a process for putting the image onto the paper. Okay, when you do that part, which I think that's fixing. Right, when you fix the image onto the paper and then you dry it and then you do all that other stuff with the paper. When he did that, he used a negative that only had the image of the snowflake. He cut everything else off of that. Okay, when you see these, imagine you do the little snowflake thing that you do in grade school, where you take a piece of paper and you fold it into like an equilateral triangle, and then you take a scissors and you cut the little notches out of it, and then when you unfold it, you get a doily that looks snowflake-esque, right? And it's symmetric because you've cut out the little edges on there, and it's got those little holes and stuff in there. Imagine after you've done that, you have to make a copy of that, and then cut out each of those little holes with a razor knife, okay? And then imagine that you're doing that with a photographic negative. And you're going to do it 2,500 times just to get what's in the book. And another several thousand for the ones that didn't make it into the book. That is an insane amount of work to give us some absolutely stunning photographs of snowflakes. So he catches the snowflake, brings it inside, puts it on the slide, takes the photograph with the right exposure, takes the negative, makes a copy of the negative, trims the negative around the snowflake, and then develops that into the picture. And that's one image. And there's 2,500 in the book. All right. So this is an absolutely incredible amount of work. The dedication here and the love of craft is off the charts for this guy. When successfully done, this greatly increases the beauty and artistic value of the pictures, and at the same time leaves their scientific worth wholly unimpaired. The book then goes on to talk about how the figures are laid out in the book, how the images are laid out. It goes through a set of classifications, basically starting with the simplest ones, which are basically hexagons. Just like imagine a hexagon with some little patterns in the hexagon, kind of things you would maybe draw in grade school. And then what happens when you go through the book, when you go through the pages 24 through 49 are it's called relatively large and plain hexagons. And then you get relatively large with simple extensions at the corners. So imagine a situation where you put a little gap on the edge of the hexagon to separate the corners a little bit. And then over the course of the next several hundred pages, you will see that the way these are laid out, the hexagons start becoming less hexagony and more snowflakey because those gaps are getting deeper into the center of the hexagon, and the things that's left over get more frilly. Okay. So when you get to pages like 160, it says relatively small hexagons with fern or plume-like extensions. And then it just, and if you do other things to hexagons, like make 3 of the sides very short and 3 of the sides very long, eventually a hexagon turns into an equilateral triangle. And there are pictures of snowflakes that are shaped like that. There are pictures in the back. The last couple pages are like psychotic snowflakes. They are hexagonal. Imagine a hexagonal, like a cylinder, like a tall, thin hexagon, like a hexagon, but that's just one layer of a post. And then at the end of each, on the top and bottom is like a cap, a pillar of hexagons on the bottom and on the top. And sometimes that hexagons on the bottom is going to be the same as the length of the post, and the one on the top is going to be real small. These things look like something that came out of they look like the wings on TIE fighters that in the Star Wars movies. These really elaborate kinds of shapes of hexagons decorated with stuff. There's a list of very strange things that you see in there, things that look like other things. He says this, that there are pictures in the crystals. What memory is there that does not fondly cherish the time when, as the last fire was burning low on a winter's night, Granddad showed us beautiful faces and wondrous scenes in the glowing coals? And what joy it was to find faces, objects, and every sort of things ourselves in that fire, a delight never outgrown by any who have truly known its charm. So when the fire's dying and the coals are glowing, you can say, hey, look, that looks like a face. Look, that's like an eye there, and there's another eye there, and this little thing is a mouth. Okay, look, there's a face in there. And someone say, oh, look, I see a dog. Or like seeing pictures in clouds, right? You can see pictures in clouds. There are pictures in these snowflakes, right? And they go through, they say that on page 42, the second one is a pilot. It looks like a pilot's wheel, like for steering a ship. Number 10 on page 38 looks like hippopotamus heads. There are 6 of them around a circle, or around the hexagon. There's one on page 47, number 8 looks like birds flying, almost like an Escher print. There's ones that look like milk bottles and soup bowls and just incredible shapes that the human eye can pick up out of these images that are in the snowflakes. It's an absolutely incredible thing. There is more discussion, and I will leave that for you to read, about how different environmental situations produce the different kinds of snowflakes. Okay, so not only did he collect the snowflakes and figure out how to photograph them and then photograph them and do the work and trim the negative and all that stuff, but he noted what situations caused which kinds of snowflakes to form. Okay, so and there's discussion that he knows the meteorology of this stuff. All right, the simple crystals therefore reach the Earth in largest numbers in the west to northwest in the northern hemisphere, southwest in the southern hemisphere, in the west or northwest portion of the general snowstorm where the temperature is lowest and the falling snow is fine and scanty. And they are also at high latitudes. So like in a snowstorm, different pieces of the storm produce different kinds of snowflakes. Well, obviously that's going to be true when you stop and you think about that. But how many times do you look out there and watch the snow falling and you say, oh, wow, we have big snowflakes or we have tiny snowflakes? Are you thinking about like where did that snowflake get formed? Was it formed at super high altitudes where you get cirrostratus clouds way up there? Or are these cumulus formed snowflakes? Was it warm? Was it cold? Was it really near freezing? He goes through and he talks about sleet and about glazing. And there's a section on dew and on different kinds of frost and on rime and all sorts of wonderful things. This book, even though there's only 10 pages to read and the rest is all pictures, which is really good for some of us who just love to look at the pictures. This is worth seeing. And it gets even better because there's a children's book. There's a children's book that tells the story of Wilson Bentley, and it's called Snowflake Bentley. And it discusses his life and how his parents bought him the camera and how he wanted to do these things and how and what he ended up achieving over his lifetime. And what he left to us is just an incredible thing. This is just it's a beautiful book. And granted, the version we have right here is I don't think this one is in print anymore. One thing I read on Wikipedia, it says that the book is still in print. I'm not sure that that's really true. I think it may be difficult to obtain. That may be something that Wikipedia's got to be updated. So I don't know, call your favorite Wikipedia editor and see if that's still good. This is a guy that, we should all hope that we have something in our life that gives us the kind of joy that he must have gotten from doing this. To do the work that he did in the conditions that he did it in, to give us what he gave us is astounding. And it's a testament to doing great work patiently, carefully, quickly, intelligently, and leaving a legacy behind that everyone will just wonder how you did it. All right, so put down the iPhone, stop viewing the cat videos, and figure out something you can do to leave greatness behind for the generations that follow you. So in the meantime, I'll ask you all to seek the good, live virtuously and flourish, and enjoy spring. It's coming, but think about the snow and enjoy the adventure of life.
It's going to be a great day.